This is Your Anxiety Toolkit, episode number 101. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Well, welcome back. I am so thrilled to be here with you again today. And I'm actually really honored that you would choose to spend your valuable time with me. Thank you so much. I really mean that. Well, it's the 101 episode. This is pretty exciting. If any of you didn't get to hear and be with us for the 100th episode last week, please do go back and listen to it. We had so many incredible guests. It was like a wonderful reunion of all of my favorite people, or most of my favorite people, and it was just so much fun. And I loved hearing all of the amazing feedback from that. So yay. This week, I'm actually just going to dive right back into the work because that just seems to be how it goes. You have a big party and then you're like, all right, let's just go back to work. And what I'm noticing in my office and what I'm noticing a lot of the questions I'm getting from you guys is about the idea and the practice of being uncertain. A lot of people are understanding why they need to be uncertain. They're conceptually getting it, but the actual practice of being uncertain is maybe not working for them, or they're having a little block there. And so I really wanted to separate some time and just to address this one issue and go as deep into it as we can, troubleshoot maybe some problems that you might be having with being uncertain, right? And if you are having a hard time, you're definitely not alone. Definitely not alone. This is probably what I spend the majority of my time with clients addressing, is their resistance or roadblocks to actually being uncertain. So let's talk about it a little bit here and how this might look. So when it comes to being uncertain, we all know that a part of managing anxiety means not being certain about it, right? Like if we're trying to grasp for certainty, we're probably going to get stuck, we're probably going to get all caught up, and it's probably going to not go so well. And this happens in all of the anxiety disorders, to be honest. People will come to me, whether they have social anxiety, eating disorders, OCD, body focused repetitive behaviors, health anxiety, and they will say, okay, I get the obsessive compulsive cycle. I understand why doing compulsions is a problem. I understand that ruminating and seeking reassurance and avoiding my fear actually keeps me getting stuck. And I know the alternative to that is to be uncertain. But, and that's it, but there's always a big but there, right? And so let's look. So if it's someone with social anxiety, again, they might conceptually understand it, but before they go to do an exposure, they still are getting caught in an analysis or a ritual or a routine where they're trying to figure out whether people will judge them as they walk into the party, or they're going to present, or, whatever the experience they're doing, right? So on the front end, they know their work is once they're in there to be uncertain, but they're spending a lot of time before the event trying to figure out who will judge me, what can I do to avoid being judged, how can I reduce my vulnerability, right? Let's say if you had generalized anxiety, you might be, knowing that this fear is taking up a ton of your time. You might be like, yes, I understand. I have to choose love and not fear. But still, there's this lingering piece in you thinking, there's another piece to this. There's another piece of this puzzle. If I could just figure that out, right? With OCD, my clients know they have to do exposures, right? They know they have to do exposure and response prevention. And they know they have to be uncertain. They know that's the big ingredient. So how it happens, what I see a lot is they'll spend quite a little bit of time or quite a lot of time before doing exposure and response prevention, trying to reduce the uncertainty as much as they can, right? Like they'll try and be figuring it out. Like, if I do this exposure, does that actually make me a bad person? I feel guilty about it. What does that mean? Should I feel guilty? Is it okay? My therapist told me to do it. So that kind of lets me off the hook, right? They spend a lot of time in this matrix trying to make sense of what's about to happen, right? Now, this also happens in eating disorders, right? We know that a part of eating disorder is sort of like a weight recovery, a sort of return to a healthy weight that's manageable and maintainable. And so often they will know they have to eat and restore their body, but a lot of time they spend a lot of time trying to make sure that this won't make them overweight, right? And so there's a ton of fear going in on this idea of like, well, I will do the scary exposure. I will do it, but I need some certainty on the front end. And for body-focused repetitive behaviors, this is very much true as well, in that we know we have to ride out an urge just like we would ride out an anxiety wave if we had panic. But often we're trying to control the environment. This goes for all of these disorders. Control the environment to a degree where we think we can handle it, right? And so what we see here is sort of a conditional exposure. Like, I'll do the exposure, but as long as I have this A, B, and C on the front end, right? And this way of thinking, this mindset, undoes a lot of the good work that we do in exposure and response prevention. And when we talk about it's a beautiful day to do hard things, often people misunderstand that as saying it's a beautiful day to reduce uncertainty so I can do hard things. And that's not what the saying is about. It isn't that, right? Plus, number one, it doesn't sound as good. Number two, it doesn't work as well, right? We cannot have the saying it's a beautiful day to reduce discomfort so we can do the hard things, right? When people ask me how to be uncertain, how to do the hard thing, I always say to them that it's like a sandwich, right? It's not just you do the exposure and then you put a piece of bread on the end. The bread needs to go on either end, right? The bread being the uncertainty, the meat and the cheese being the exposure or doing the hard thing. The hard thing is what makes the sandwich a sandwich, right? But we need the uncertainty to be before the hard thing and after the hard thing. And that's something I think we don't talk about enough. I think it's something that we miss. I think it's a trap we fall into, and I do it too. You're not alone. I do it too. But I want you to keep thinking of the hard thing as being a sandwich. On either end, you put the bread, which is uncertainty, and willingness to be uncomfortable. If you're not doing that, it's a really crappy sandwich. Now, that being said, if you're in the early stages of this, it's okay if you've got an open-faced sandwich for a little while, right? That's okay. Metaphorically, your sandwich doesn't have to be perfect, right? But I'm really here to push you guys just the right amount and challenge you to try to put the uncertainty on either end, right? So that you sandwich the hard thing that you're doing that you know you need to do. You sandwich it with a real commitment to being uncomfortable and uncertain. Now, I catch clients doing this all the time, and it's not their fault. It's normal human instincts to try and bargain this one out, right? So in the moment when you're really anxious, all you want to do is just take a little bit of the edge off, right? If I could just find this one thing out, or if I could just solve this, or I could just reduce the anxiety a little bit. And I get it. And then they'll often say to me, this is really hard. I just don't understand how to be uncertain. Well, the truth is, you are uncertain. We are uncertain. Our attempts to try and solve it is, in fact, us being uncertain. When someone says to me, I don't know how to be uncertain, I usually will try and say, yes, you do. You're very skilled at being uncertain. You have tons of experience of being uncertain. The difference, and what I think they're actually asking is, I haven't got a lot of experience with willingness to be uncertain. Does that make sense to you guys? The fact that we're doing compulsive behaviors, or we're trying to figure out if we'll get judged, or we're trying to figure out if we'll gain weight or lose weight, or if there's a better solution, you're doing that because you are uncertain already. We all are uncertain about nearly everything, right? It's really, really hard being a human. It's an incredibly uncertain experience that we're in. So we all have actually great expertise and practice of being uncertain. It's just that willingness piece that gets in the way, to let go and surrender to the uncertainty in our lives, to allow and be patient with uncertainty as it rises and falls in our body. It's a mindset shift we have about it that is so crucial for our long-term recovery with anxiety, right? So number one mindset shift is, I actually already know how to be uncertain. I'm just not really great at wanting uncertainty, right? Now, this is a thing I want to just review with you guys. And this is more of a philosophy, but I think it's really important when we talk about the willingness. If we looked at Buddhist philosophy, the core concept of Buddhist philosophy is around this one or two truths. The first truth, when it comes to this Buddhist philosophy, this is what they call the Four Noble Truths. We're not talking religion here. I just want you to grab this concept with me. It's very much true for the management of anxiety. So the first truth in Buddhist philosophy is that in life, there is suffering. That is a fact. It's something we have to accept. But the second noble truth, and this is the one that I love, I know I've talked about it on the podcast before, but the one that I love is this. The second truth is that our suffering is caused by our attachment to the thing that we're suffering with, right? And that, I remember reading that the first time I'd ever read it and was like completely, mic drop. It shifted so much for me because it got me to see that most of my suffering, if not all of my suffering, was coming from craving and grasping too hard on certain things and having aversion and avoiding other things. Those behaviors was what was causing so much of my discomfort and suffering in my life. And it's frustrating because I have to keep going back to these two truths and take a really good hard look at myself when I have anxiety or when I'm resisting and ask myself, okay, have I accepted that it's normal to have discomfort? And number two, what am I clinging to? What am I grasping at? What am I avoiding? What am I having aversion to, right? And often, as we were just talking about, we all are walking around experiencing uncertainty, but we have a significant amount of aversion to it. And that is what causes us to have such discomfort around it. That's what we wrestle with it so much because we have put in our mind that it's something we should get rid of, right? If you're having anxiety about something that's uncertain, you can't figure it out, it's probably because it's not figure outable. Well, in fact, I'm willing to say it's not figure outable, because if it was figure outable, you would have figured it out already, right? It's uncertain because it's uncertain, right? Now, I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, yeah, but what about my thought? My thought is particularly terrible, or my fear is particularly more concerning or problematic or dangerous or, horrible, right? Again, I hear and smell aversion, right? This is where we go back to our common mindfulness tools of non-judgment and diffusion and radical acceptance of, and we just observe, right? We have to be very careful we don't get caught in that content, right? And we have to be very careful we're not wrestling, aversion or with craving or grasping to make a thought or a feeling or a sensation or an urge go away. We have to allow it, right? So this is very much, I know, a repetition on the stuff we've talked about before. I know, and you'll hear it from me again. I promise you, I will be back to talk about this again many, many times. But I wanted to bring these major core concepts up so that you can reflect and see where maybe you're wrestling with uncertainty. It's there. You're already uncertain. You might as well allow it to be there. Now, before I finish up, one thing I know that's going to come up here is that you're going to ultimately want this to go away. You might even be upset, just saying, but it's not fair. This is just so hard. Other people don't have this struggle. I shouldn't have to be uncertain like this because nobody else is feeling this way, or most of my family have no idea what this feels like. And yes, I totally feel you. I totally hear you. This is not fair. I agree, right? But what we can do is we can actually use that sandwich metaphor for compassion as well. We can put a ton of compassion on the front end and a ton of compassion on the back end of doing the hard thing. And the cool thing is, you're going to walk away from this stronger and more compassionate to yourself than those who don't go through what you're going through, right? It's this great reward at the end, and that you've got all of these tools that other people weren't forced to practice, but you were, right? So that's the main thing I wanted to talk with you guys. You do know how to be uncertain, but what we want to do here is accept radically that we need uncertainty on both ends, not just on the back end of doing the hard thing, right? On both ends. And it might even be embracing the uncertainty that is sprinkled around your life. Go on a little bit of an uncertainty treasure hunt and look around your life, and you're going to find it's everywhere. Right now, you're uncertain on whether I'm going to yell at you guys. You're uncertain on whether this device that you're listening to this podcast is going to break. You're uncertain about whether it's going to rain or hail or snow or, get windy today. There's so much uncertainty in our lives. Our work is to reduce our attachment to it being any other way. Okay. That being said, I have a little bit of an amazing We Did a Hard Thing segment to talk about today. So I received this incredible email from an Instagram follower. Her name is Dr. Me Clever. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And she sent me a photo of herself, which makes me so happy doing her exposures. And this is so cool. She said, I'm holding a Chilean rose tarantula. Somehow overcoming my phobia is easier than tackling OCD on a daily basis. But I couldn't pass this opportunity to face a fear, and a great way to get back on track after taking a couple of months from pregnancy-related sickness and depression. It was a beautiful day to do hard things. I was thinking about you and all you teach today. And there's a picture of her. She's holding a tarantula. She has a beautiful big smile on her face, even though I can see that it's scary. And you guys, this is what I love about the work that I do. And thank you so much for submitting that Did a Hard Thing segment, because that is what it's all about. Oh my goodness. It's, taking any opportunity we can to face our fear, right? Taking any opportunity we can. It's just such brilliant work. So thank you so much. You guys, I love when you tag me and share with me photos of you doing an exposure. The best thing ever. I know I sound a little bit crazy, but I love it so much because that's the message I have for you guys. If I can do one thing in my lifetime, it will be to change the way we look at hard things. We live in a society where we are pushed with advertisements all the time to try and make life easier. And I get it. I like life to be easier too. But we are training ourselves. We're training the next generation to run away from the hard things. And you guys, the hard things is what makes us strong, incredibly courageous, brave people. It's where we get all of our knowledge. We grow through the hard things. So we have to keep leaning in. It's the biggest message I have, okay? So thank you so much for that I Did a Hard Thing segment. Made my day so much. Okay, you guys, look around. Go online, Google OCD walk, 1,000,000 steps for OCD. The walk's happening all over the country, probably even all over the world. Search for where they're doing a walk near you. We are walking for awareness. I know there's one right in my city of Calabasas. So if you're in the area, come join us. I will have links in the show notes. Please do get involved if you have OCD or know someone with OCD or have a family member. I think here is a time where we can start to break down the stigma. So let's do that if you can. I think it's all in June across the country. All right, my guys. I love you guys so much. Keep doing the hard work. Make it a good, thick sandwich. That's what I love. Use the metaphor in whatever way works for you. I really hope that was helpful, and have a wonderful day. It's a beautiful day to do hard things. Please note that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.